The warm light of the late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Kerrington's new townhome. The place was a fresh start for her, a physical representation of the new life she was carving out. The modest yet stylish space was hers alone. No shared closets, no evidence of David's presence, no reminders of her life as she was leaving behind. It was the first time in years she felt like she could breathe freely. As she finished unpacking the last box of books, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message from Jake lit up the screen. "Dinner tonight at my place. Something simple, just us. Can you make it?" he asked. Kerrington smiled, her heart fluttering at his thoughtfulness. "Yes, I can make it. Sounds perfect. I'll bring dessert." "You are the dessert," he said jokingly. Life with Jake felt easy, natural, and uncomplicated. Everything her marriage to David hadn't been for years. While Carrington was finding her footing, her children were adjusting to the new family dynamic in their own ways. Her youngest son, Cameron, had decided to stay with his father since their home was close to the school. And of course, it was his last year, so there was no need in uprooting him from all of his friends, and ideally, he was determined to graduate with his class. The thought of Cameron staying with his father stung, but Carrington knew the bond between father and son was strong, and she didn't want to disrupt it. On the other hand, Olivia and her brother Eric had chosen independence. The siblings had rented a small but cozy apartment together. Olivia's connection with her biological father, Ethan, had grown stronger, and Eric, always protecting, was right there by her side. Olivia was right there as his co-pilot, and Carrington was in agreement that it would do Olivia some good to become more independent. And why not develop that independence, but with her protective brother? At least Carrington knew deep down Olivia would be safe and secured. David had taken the changes in stride. He was seeing Rachel openly now, a relationship Carrington couldn't bring herself to think too deeply about. The kids had welcomed their stepbrother Dominic in with open arms, however, it was still hard for Kerrington to acknowledge their new sibling. She told herself that Dominic was in fact a love child and didn't ask to be here, and she would put all things aside despite how she truly felt. She made peace with his presence and extended being a mother to him when needed. David still remained cordial, even reaching out to Kerrington when it came to co-parenting. However, the kids were able to manage without her being in the middle. They were all of age to make their own decisions when it came to their dad. However, his messages to Kerrington were brief and straight to the point. But there was a noticeable absence of hostility. David couldn't deal with the fact that Kerrington had Jake and that they had become an item. However, he would have to accept their relationship at some point because things were heating up expeditiously. David kept insinuating that Jake and Carrie had been in an entanglement all along, and this newfound relationship of theirs just confirmed that his feelings were correct. Kerrington, however, simply denied his accusations and never confirmed or denied anything to David when it came to Jake. Despite the steps forward, Marcus's shadow loomed over Kerrington's new life. He was in jail awaiting trial for attempted murder and breaking and entering. But that hadn't stopped him from finding ways to reach out to her. Jake was adamant about protecting her and insisted that she lived with him. But despite his efforts, Kerrington didn't want to jump from a 20-year marriage to a new relationship with Jake, even though she felt unconditionally safe with him. The first Facebook message came a week after his arrest. "Carrie, I never meant to hurt you. I just was desperate. Please let me explain." She hadn't replied. She deleted the messages without a second thought, but the messages kept coming. You mean everything to me. How can you just throw us away like this? Jake doesn't love you the way that I do. He'll never understand you like I do. He can't make you feel the way that I do. That's why you kept coming back to me. Carrie, I think about you all the time. Answer me. If you don't respond, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about us. I'll make sure your life is ruined the way you have ruined mine. I'll kill you if you don't answer me. The threats didn't scare her anymore, but they were unsettling. She had shown the message to Jake, who immediately wanted to contact the authorities. Kerrington, however, insisted on waiting until Marcus's trial was closer, worried that any confrontation might provoke him even further. On a cool Sunday evening, Jake invited Kerrington to his loft. The table was set with candles and flowers, and the smell of roasted chicken and herbs traveled through the air. Kerrington was excited about spending some alone time with Jake with no interruptions from Marcus, or being worried about his presence lurking around the loft. Jake couldn't take his eyes off of her. He was amazed at how beautiful Kerrington looked. Just something about the way she carried herself had always attracted him to her. For the life of him, Jake couldn't understand why David had fumbled when it came to her. But Jake knew exactly why Marcus had become so crazy in love. Kerrington could have any man she wanted, but at this very moment she was here with him. They kissed each other softly and hugged each other tightly. Jake felt so proud to finally have Kerrington in a way that he technically dreamed about for the past 10 years of knowing her. He felt as if his dreams had finally come true and nothing or no one could disrupt their time spent together. Soft music was playing in the background as she sat across from Jake, staring into his big doe eyes. They were so brown, she thought to herself. Sexy brown is what she called him. They were almost sleepy looking. Also, she noticed he had the most amazing set of eyebrows that were perfectly arched. Jake's skin complexion was a mixture of a sweet caramel chocolate brown, and she couldn't wait to take a bite of every inch of him again. It was a sexual chemistry unlike no other. She was lost in translation because she never knew just how sexy Jake looked until now. It was crazy, she thought. After all these years, she really see him now for the man he truly is. The age difference was thrown out the window, and at this point, it was nothing Kerrington wanted more than to go all the way in with Jake. As they finished their meal, Jake reached across the table, taking Kerrington's hand in his. All Kerrington was thinking about was that what just occurred and how Jake's hands were all over her body, as she was definitely ready for round two. But Jake had other intentions and things to get off his chest. I know life's been crazy for you these past few months, he began, his voice steady and warm. But I also know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. When the dust settles, when the divorce is finalized, and this chapter is fully behind you, I want us to take the next step together. Will you marry me? Out of nowhere, just like that, Kerrington had received a marriage proposal from Jake and still legally married to David. Kerrington immediately pulled her hand slowly away, unaware of what to truly say. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened to reveal a delicate diamond ring. Kerrington gasped, tears springing to her eyes. Jake, her hand covering her mouth, totally in shock. No pressure, he said quickly. I just want you to know where my heart is. I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere, and when the time is right, we can take the next steps together. Kerrington smiled through the tears. Yes, she whispered. When the time is right, yes, I will marry you. Yes, Jake, I will. Jake stood, pulling her into a warm embrace, kissing her ever so gently. For the first time in years, Kerrington felt truly loved, seen, and understood. The next morning, Jake watched Kerrington as she slept peacefully, replaying their intimate night in his head. He was taken back at how beautiful she looked sleeping as the light from the sun peeked through the blinds. He couldn't believe that after all these years, Kerrington was finally going to be a part of his life the way he always imagined her being. Kerrington was settling into her new life, finding her rhythm with Jake and enjoying the stability she had felt in years. The kids were thriving in their respective spaces, and for once, she could see a future without the chaos that had defined her past. But peace was fleeting. One evening, as she was preparing dinner, her phone buzzed with a notification. Another message from Marcus. She hesitated, decided to open it. You think you're safe now? Think again. You think a trial is going to stop me? He yelled through the phone. The line dropped. The words sent a chill down her spine. She immediately blocked him again, but the unease lingered. A week later, while Kerrington and Jake were out shopping, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text message from an unknown number. It's not over, Kerrington. I know where you live. I know where you go daily. I'm close. Her heart stopped. She showed the message to Jake, who immediately called the police. They assured them that they would investigate, but Kerrington couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. To stay safe, Kerrington and Jake would both take turns in spending nights with each other. The trial was coming up, and Kerrington knew that Marcus would definitely be convicted. There was no doubt in her mind. The night as she sat in her townhome alone before Jake arrived, there was a knock at the door. Peeking through the peephole, she saw no one, but when she opened the door, a single envelope laid on the mat. Kerrington immediately looked around to see if she could see anyone walking or driving away, and when she didn't notice anything, she locked the door frantically. Kerrington ran up the stairs to her bedroom to grab her cell phone to call Jake. She dialed Jake, her voice trembling. You need to come over here now. Jake arrived at Kerrington, and there the envelope laid on the table as they both stared at it. Jake checked the perimeter of the townhome with his gun at his side, and all throughout the house looking for anything or anyone that seemed out of place. Nothing was found out of the ordinary, so Jake secured the home as best as he could. Kerrington fixed them both a glass of wine and proceeded to open the envelope. Inside was a photo of her and Jake taken just days ago with a red X slashed over Jake's face. They both looked at each other with disbelief and then back at the envelope. Confused and unsure how Marcus was able to take pictures of them when he was supposed to be in jail was baffling to them. Kerrington's blood ran cold. We're not letting him win. We're not going to let him win, Jake said firmly. This man cannot run anything behind bars. If the police won't do anything, then I will. But Kerrington couldn't ignore the fact that Marcus wasn't working alone and that the danger was far from over.